I am Margaret. I was born on May 1st, 1924. I was the second born of three daughters. My father, Jando János, was the village blacksmith. My mother sewed our clothes and cooked healthy meals for our family and the man that works for my father. I went to a small one-room school. I was curious about the world. I wanted to learn everything I could from our teacher, Mr. Parr. He was also our choir master, and we learned a lot of traditional songs from him. On Sundays, we dressed up in beautiful clothes and we went to the church with our parents. On Saturday night, there was music and dancing. I met my husband at one of the Saturday night church dances. He was a gymnast and he played on the soccer team. My best friend, Aranka, and I went to soccer games. When my sister Anne and Laszlo announced their engagement, we took a group pictures of the four Gall brothers and my father and Joe. My sister asked me to be her maid of honor. I had my hair all nicely done at the salon, and I wore a beautiful dress that my mother sewed specially for my sister's wedding. In 1947, my husband and I were married, and I became Mrs. Margaret Tampai. My mother sewed the most beautiful wedding gown, and my husband gave me the perfect bouquet. My younger sister, Maria, was my maid of honor, and Joe's brother, Sándor, was his best man. Our son, Joe Jr., was born. My sister's daughter was already 4. My younger sister, Maria, started dating. My husband became a tool and die maker. He and my father were working at a huge factory. I was working at the Kistex, a textile company. My sister, Marika, married István Hochstein, and they had a little boy and named him Pityu. Our son was in kindergarten now, and my mother looked after him until his father and I get home from work. Joe looked so serious in his school uniform. He was one of 31 boys in his grade 1 graduation photo. Joe often played with his cousin Pityu and Annushka in the yard. My husband, brother Laci, met and married Marcy. They had a little girl named her Marika. Joe's sister Maria also got married, had a boy named Géza after his father, Géza Ornek. There was an uprising within a university, and before long, the whole country was in a revolution. My husband thought we should get out of Hungary. There was bullets flying over our head in our yard. The horrible rumble of Russian tanks could be heard rolling toward us in the night. My husband made a quiet arrangement, and we said our goodbyes to family and friends. We traveled to the country by train. We met at a farmer house after dark, and he guided a group of us to the border. My husband ended up carrying our boy as we swam over a muddy ditch to get into Austria. The next day we were bused to a refugee camp in the Austrian mountains. We stayed in an old castle with large rooms set up with bunks, beds, and a dining hall to feed everyone. In January of 1957, my husband was desperately trying to get our papers in order. We took advantage of the Catholic Church offer to place our son Joe in the home of a helpful Portuguese family. My husband managed to get our immigration paper for BC, Canada, a lot quicker than to the US. We arrived in Vancouver a half world apart from our son. My husband could not get a job in Vancouver, so he took the bus to Toronto and get a job as a dishwasher. This was a very sad time for us all. My son was in Portugal. I was living in a chinchilla farm. Husband was in Toronto. As soon as my husband got a decent job, he sent for me, and we moved into a second-floor flat in Toronto. I get home for my new job one day, and I could not believe my eyes. My growing son was standing there in the middle of the kitchen floor. It was wonderful to have our little family back together again. We soon moved to Concord Avenue and shared the house with other Hungarian family for most of a year. We bought our first car, and on weekends we explored some of the lakes close to Toronto. Joe and his father played games, and sometimes he showed him some gymnastics. In 1960, we bought our first house in North York on McAllister Road. Our son went to Dublin Public School on Shepherd. It was great to be working, earning money, and coming home to our house with a modern kitchen. Our son was taking music lessons. We bought our first TV sets. Boy, they were huge back then. Christmas trees was up in our home for the first time in years. Next summer, we got a German Shepherd for Joe, and he named him Rebel. We had a lot of fun with that dog. My husband bought a new car. Boy, he was so proud. I often wondered how my parents and sisters were doing back in Hungary. I miss them very much. It was very exciting to go back home and see my parents. I told them all about Canada, our wonderful home. They seemed to be healthy and happy, raising pigs and chickens as always. I spent a little time with Maria, my husband's sister. I also visited my husband's parents, Papa and Mama, Tompai. His brother Lotzi came over. We had a very good reunion. The whole family went out to a beer garden and we had a huge celebration the night before I went back to Canada. When I arrived back in Canada, I was glad to be there. I really felt like Canada was now my home. In 1962, my husband got hired the Havilland aircraft as a tool die maker on a new aircraft project called the Dash 7. In 1964, Joe Jr. turned 16. We bought a brand new house. I loved to grow roses, and my husband fixed up the basement into a recreation room with a bar. We had a lot of good friends, and we loved to entertain, dance, sing, and make good food. Our son graduated from high school. He was hired by Food City as dairy manager. I was working at a furniture company called the House of Braemar. Joe graduated from Seneca College and married his college sweetheart, Kathy Day. My husband and I celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. In 1974, Joe and Kathy, with friends Gabby and George, took a 9-week trip touring Europe. They visited our Hungarian relatives and they met his wife, Kathy, who was 4 months pregnant with Michael. Joe said it was so special to be with his granddad again. While Joe was working for the Toronto Board of Education, he was taking courses in photography. In 1975, Kathy gave birth to our first grandson, Michael. Joe was hired by Schuler Photography in Collingwood. Joe was an assistant photographer before he got a very good offer to work for a national school studios. Unfortunately, his marriage with Kathy ended in 1978. When George Brown College opened the Kensington campus, I was asked to teach upholstery sewing in the manpower program. Teaching was one of my dreams since I was a young girl. I took a refresher course in English and started teaching. I am sure I taught them the skills to sew properly and probably a thing or two about getting along in life. My husband and I traveled to Europe and we visited our families. My sister Anne's husband Laszlo had passed away. He never recuperated from an illness he got while he was a prisoner of war in Russia. I spent some time with my younger sister Maria. Her husband also passed away after having a heart attack, and she was sadly left on her own. Our parents were getting old. It was important to spend some quality time together. We enjoyed being with what family we had left. My best friend Aranka had just passed away unexpectedly. In 1980, our son married Valerie McKay. In February 1982, our second grandson, Cale, was born. Joe was doing graduation photos at York University and University of Toronto. In June 1983, my twin granddaughters Mika and Lauren were born. Both girls were healthy. My husband worked for De Havilland for well over 25 years. He was given a 25-year service plaque at a special company presentation. We paid off our house and bought a condominium in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Some of our good friends, Doris and George, were living in Florida already. As we become regular snowbirds, we made friends with many more Canadians who did the same. In 1989, my son and his family moved to Vancouver. Cale, Mika, and Lauren were going to Lions Bay School. It was a very friendly, small community. They have their own private beach for swimming, sailing, fishing, and kayaking. The whole family went to Whistler and Grouse Mountain for skiing and snowboarding. My son opened the photograph studio in downtown Vancouver. Joe was helping Valerie with her catering company when he met the manager of the highway improvement project that get his business going right up to the Olympics. Our grandson graduated from Western University with a degree in urban development. In 2007, Michael married Tara Durant. They took a trip to Hawaii and returned as man and wife. My husband and I celebrated 60 years of marriage that November. My son took us for a nice dinner and hired the accordion player. Mike and Tara have given us two beautiful great-granddaughters. McKenna was born in 2008 and Caden born in 2010. My husband and I never thought we would be great-grandparents. Unfortunately, my husband developed a heart problem and left us on March 2nd, 2011. He was 84 years old, such a great man. I dearly miss him. It has been very sad and difficult to live without my husband after being together for 64 years. I constantly remind myself that I am lucky, that what a wonderful life I have with my husband. He was a gentle, smart man and had a good sense of humor. Our family has grown from the three of us when we first came to Canada to 4 grandchildren and 2 great-granddaughters. Gail and Jenna plan to get married soon and have children as well. They are all living their own life now, and I encourage them to do their best in this challenging world. I am thankful to my husband and my family for all the good things I have enjoyed in life. My husband and I could truly say we made it.